Kganyago also highlighted that the safe and trusted exchange of credit data across borders could unlock access to services like real-time credit scoring. Channel Africa business reporter Innocent Samosa has more.
This year's G20 Tech Sprint is placing the spotlight on open finance with an emphasis on scalable technological solutions that enhance trust and integrity in the financial system. South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago says the initiative aims to discover world-class innovations that can help regulators tackle key global challenges.
The digital identity will enable easier know your customer identification and verification processes, allowing consumers to open accounts, apply for loans, or access government grants without time-consuming paperwork. A secure and verified digital identity for consumers will also decrease the risks of fraud and make the financial system safer.
Meanwhile, Sub-Deputy Governor Mampo Modise highlighted the evolving role of central banks in shaping the future of digital finance.
So basically, our responsibilities as central bank is to maintain financial stability and the safety net of the financial system. And how do we then achieve this objective in the context of fintech, especially striking a balance between promoting innovation, but also guarding against the risk. I think that's why we appreciate such innovation.
But how do we measure the success of these tech sprint initiatives, and what examples are there of real-world impact? Benedict Knowles, head of the BIS Innovation Hub in Hong Kong, weighs in.
So in general, these tech sprints are really a unique opportunity, as she said, to work with the central banks. I don't think there is another tech sprint globally, frankly, where you have the opportunity to work with 63 central banks globally, because the BIS de facto is an international organization of 63 central banks, including the SARB. Secondly, I am very glad to say that this is the first of these tech sprints on the African continent. And this is very important because with tech sprints, you tend to get applicants from the local ecosystem as well as the global ecosystem. But for example, last year was Brazil, so we had a lot of applicants from LATAM. The year before was India. We had a lot of applicants from India.
As the global regulators and innovators continue to collaborate, the G20 Tech Sprint provides a critical platform to turn bold ideas into practical financial solutions, building a more inclusive and resilient global economy. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 12 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. A lot in store for you this afternoon, but really beginning with what is an intriguing story. This is a really competitive time of the season. We'll be talking to the president of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, Badea, Dr. Sidi Ould Tah. He is vying for the presidency of the African Development Bank, the AFDB. The AFDB is a strategic platform for the continent's development. Dr. Tah is the Mauritanian candidate for the position of president of the AFDB. His candidacy is garnering growing enthusiasm amongst observers and economic analysts. Recognized as an influential player in the African and international financial spheres, he is seen as one of the most serious contenders for the strategic function. Now, with his experience within African multilateral institutions, he positions himself as a fervent defender of economic integration and structural transformation on the African continent. Dr. Tah joins us now on the line. A very good afternoon to you, Dr. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
So I wonder what it is, or why it is, Doctor, that you believe that you are the best person to take the reins at the African Development Bank.
I do believe that all the candidates have the right skills and the right expertise and experience to manage the bank. However, I am running just to put my humble experience and my vision at the service of the continent.
And what is your vision?
So my vision is centered around four main, what I call cardinal points. The first is to scale up the volume of financing for the continent, because today the available financing is far below what is needed for the continent to develop. Second, reforming the financial architecture of the continent, because today we have a scattered landscape of financial institutions working in silos, and we need to bring them all to work together and to develop their synergy, with AFDB playing a pivotal role. Third, we need to transform Africa's demography into a powerhouse because of our young population and our women who are an asset for the continent. And if we provide them with the right skills and we provide them with the right decent jobs, the continent can really become a very strong powerhouse worldwide. The last but not least cardinal point is about building resilient infrastructure and transforming our raw materials into processed goods. So that will enable our continent to add value, but also to create more jobs for youth and women.
And you really are, Doctor, touching on some of the key points that many of the countries have been focusing on, one of them key being beneficiation. How does the continent actually benefit from the minerals that are its natural assets? And then looking at what it is that we have, a really largely young population of Africans, and how that then can be translated into economic stability. But you've been president of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa for what, about a decade now. Some have described your tenure as innovative. Some have said it has been resilient. Why do you believe that these are, the adjectives that are being used to describe your term? What is the innovation you believe that you've brought through, and what is the resilience that you have displayed?
I do believe that the 10 years spent at the head of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa was for me a learning environment. And if the bank has been transformed, and if the impact of the bank in the continent have been transformative, that was mainly because of the team of the bank. So I do believe that having the right team and also working very closely with the shareholders in a very transparent manner, and developing partnership across the continent, but also outside the continent, were very critical for Badia to have achieved the transformation it went through over the last 10 years.
And how important is innovation for the African continent? What do you believe perhaps the next decade or so could look like if we tap into some of the key assets that the continent has, as well as, technology?
So we need to transform our potential into a dividend, into a benefit for the continent. We need to reap the benefit of our transformation, our structural economic transformation of the continent. So Africa is endowed with very rich natural resources. We have the youngest population in the world. We need to transform this something which will make the continent different. And I do believe that African Development Bank, as the premier financial institution, is well positioned to act as a pivotal player, bringing together all DFIs in the continent, but also outside the continent, bringing on board the private sector, the sovereign wealth fund, the pension fund, the diaspora, and also deepening the capital market across the continent. So that will be really transformative for the continent.
What you've also done, you've championed sustainable and inclusive finance through the Sustainable Financing Framework and secured multiple ISO certificates in ESG standards and quality management. How important is it that Africa advance its position in global climate finance?
As you know, Africa is a continent who contributes less to the global emission, around 3%. But the continent is also supporting the sequestration in a very big way. For instance, the Congo Basin, for instance, is contributing a lot to the sequestration of the emission. But Africa is also suffering a great deal from the extreme events and the negative impact of climate change. So this is why one of the cross-cutting pillar of my vision for the FDB is about climate change. So climate change will be at the center of all what the bank will do, be it in scaling up its financing or reforming the architecture or harnessing the demographic dividend or developing resilient infrastructure. So climate change will be at the center of all the action the bank will do.
Well, what is your parting shot, Doctor, as we conclude our conversation today? I mean, one thing that goes without saying is that you've served as Mauritania's Minister of Economy and Finance, and through this office, you acted as National Authorizing Officer for the European Development Fund. You've represented Mauritania on the boards of governors of the AFDB, ISDB, the World Bank, and more than 10 other development institutions. So it's really clear that you've got the institutional knowledge, you've got the know-how. And the significance of policy making for the portfolio that you are hoping to get into. But what would you leave as your parting shot this afternoon? What changes do you look to introduce if you are selected to take over the AFDB?
So I do believe that I have a 360 view of the development challenges in the continent with my experience from both the supply side and the demand side. But more importantly, my vision is to bring on board all the stakeholders and to have a holistic approach for the development of the continent and to develop partnership across the continent and outside the continent, bringing all the stakeholders together to work for one goal, is to make Africa great, a great place for life and livelihood of the African population.
Dr. Tah, we wish you all the best and try not to be too nervous as you go through this process. Do you have any nerves at all?
Not at all.
Why is that? Is this just confidence speaking, or is it more of a laissez-faire type of attitude that, come what may?
No, it's just because I am firmly convinced that the continent can be changed and that the continent must change.
Dr.
And
Tah.
I do believe that...
Please go ahead, sir.
Yes. Okay, so I do believe that the continent must change and the continent can change. And I'm convinced that the continent will change in the best and to the best.
Well, we thank you so much for your time and we wish you absolutely all of the best on this journey.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Dr. Sidi Ould Tah. He's the president of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, vying for the presidency of the African Development Bank. He takes us to exactly 22 minutes after 4 p.m.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 22 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Let's take a look now at developments in Namibia. Now, the Namibia Statistics Agency, the NSA, is currently conducting the 2025-2026 Namibia Household Income and Expenditure Survey. What this is a data collection exercise aimed at providing current information for national development planning. This will be the fifth household income and expenditure survey conducted, serving as the primary source of household income and expenditure data. This is very crucial for calculating poverty and inequality indicators in the country. Joining us this afternoon to unpack this further is Alex Shimwafeni, the Statistician General and CEO at the Namibia Statistics Agency. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, Africa. Thank you for having me.
Well, I guess I have highlighted some of the key, objectives of the National of the Namibia Household Income and Expenditure Survey. But let me redirect that question back to you, and in your own words, in your own understanding, as somebody who is actively involved in this, what would you highlight as perhaps some of the key objectives of this 2025-2026 survey?
Yes, the primary objective of our 2025-2026 Namibia Household Income and Expenditure Survey, which I believe in South Africa is referred to as the National Household Budget Survey. Now, the primary objective is to collect detailed information on income as well as on spending patterns of households across the country. And here I'm referring to households because as a statistics agency, we normally do household-based surveys. Now, the data is very essential for measuring poverty levels in the country. We need to assess the living standards of people in the country, as well as to have informing evidence-based policymakers, as well as national development plans that are aiming at improving the well-being of all Namibians. Now, the NHIS, as we call it in short, is the only household survey that can also provide information on, like I said, poverty indicators and profiles of the individuals in terms of the income distribution, as well as the income differentials. We are talking about, when we talk about income inequality in terms of the Gini coefficient, of which Namibia is also one of the highest in the world, as well as the household consumption and the expenditure patterns. That's really the objective of the survey.
The last NHIS that was conducted was a good 10 years ago, the 2015-2016 one. How is this survey likely to differ from the previous ones? And I'm also just thinking that there might be a really huge difference, or perhaps you might be looking at what the impact of COVID-19 has had on the country. Just share for us some of the things that you'll be looking out for and what the key differences would be between these two.
Yeah, the previous household income and expenditure survey, obviously when you do a sample, it's based on the population, and our population has now increased from then it was about 2.1 million Namibians, and now it has increased to 3 million, 3.02 to be exact. Now, as a result, the sample size have also increased from just over 10,300 households in 2015-2016. It has increased now to around just a little bit over 11,000 households. Now, as a result of the population growth, also the sample also had to increase. Otherwise, you will not have the reliability and the accuracy of the survey results. And then also the collection period of food transactions such as tobacco, beverages, food items, and purchases of some selected non-food items. This has also been increased from 7 days in the previous survey to 14 days now, just to capture the patterns better, because you don't want to capture maybe a week in a month where the pattern, the consumption pattern it's particular, maybe either too high or too low. So you just want to capture it quite well. Now, in terms of the COVID effects, yes, that is to be seen, because the other survey was before the COVID, and now this one is after COVID. So it will be interesting to draw on those differences or the outcomes thereof.
And I wonder if you're going to be including any new modules, such as digital access, climate-related expenditure, and even perhaps informal employment, and how you plan to actually include informal sources from subsistence farming, for example, into this particular survey when calculating household income.
Yes, maybe just to end off on subsistence farming, that's always, especially if you are in looking for my African content, that is always key. That will come in, and then that the beauty of this is that people talking about the consumptions, what they consume, because they will be measuring mugs and everything that look at how much you are measuring, and some of these goods are coming from subsistence farming and not necessarily from purchases. And then to go back also on what is included now for the first time in this survey is also the expanded permanent modules on financial assets and household wealth that is now included. The labor module has also been updated to capture indicators of informal employment, which is very, very important because in the past we were only focusing on formal employment, but now informal employment is also very important. We are talking about, I think in South African terms, we talk about many people selling cheese and yama and things like that. These are very important because they allow for deeper understanding of the economic activities across the country. Yeah, so we are looking at the household level in terms of those basic consumptions, really just to answer the question.
And as we wrap up really quickly, sir, when is the survey expected to be concluded and the final report expected for release?
Okay, we have gone into the field already on the 28th of April, and it is a 12-month survey because we want to capture all these seasonal patterns. Because if you just do it in a certain time of the year, you will not be able to capture all those seasonalities. And then in terms of the reporting, normally what we do is we try to get the basic report or preliminary report also, which is basic also. We try to get that as soon as possible out. We are talking about between 3 to 6 months thereafter. Because this is now the first survey we are also doing that is digital and also GIS enabled. So using the time estimates of previous survey, we might be out. But as we are going, we are fine-tuning that. So from May onwards, we're talking about 3 months from the beginning of May next year. That's when we're expecting to have the preliminary results of this important survey.
Right, so it takes us to around end of July, beginning of August 2026. We thank you so much for your time.
That's correct.
Mr. Alex Shumafeni, and we hope to have the opportunity that when the survey does come out for you to actually take us through what the key differences are and what the state of Namibia's household and income expenditure is. We thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. We'll definitely do that.
All right, looking forward to it. That's Alex Shumafeni. He's the Statistician General and CEO at the Namibia Statistics Agency. He says already the survey out on the field from the 28th of April, so results expected in about a year's time, or just over a year, around August 2026. It's exactly 4:32 Central African time. Let's head over now to the markets desk where Thabiso Lehoko is standing by with the latest market indicators, followed by details from the sporting desk with Figile Lingwati.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Thami, and good afternoon. The dollar in South Africa is trading at 18 Rand 31, Botswana 13 Pula 48, Namibia 18 Namibian dollars 31, and in Zambia it's at 27 Kwacha 66 to the dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 485, Ethiopia 132 birr 745, Uganda 3,000 shillings 639, and in Tanzania the dollar is trading at 2,000 shillings 690. One US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 604. In Egypt, a 50 Egyptian pound 631. Tunisia, a 2 dinar 984. In Algeria, it is trading at 131 dinar 86. The Moroccan dirham is trading at 9105 to the US dollar. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 911 kwanza 837. The Congolese franc is at 2,851 to the US dollar. Gold is trading at $3,839 and platinum at $978 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $61.65 a barrel. From the markets desk for Channel Africa Business, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And we begin with athletics. The East African athletes have made it their business to cash in global events whenever they participate. And the 2025 London Marathon returned with a star-studded elite field. Although the winners are not as well paid in some other iconic sporting events, the elite men's and women's able-bodied races and men's and women's wheelchair races had a prize pot of $380,000, with the winners receiving $55,000 each. Our Ugandan correspondent Sam Mpoza has more and elaborates on the East African athletes and how does the winnings propel them to dominate the races.
I think it's still an African problem to take sports as an industry that can make money. But yes, in East Africa, the long-distance athletes have now realized that they can make money, they can make a living out of athletics. And yes, indeed, they're making good money out of athletics, especially in Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia. And you see, when you travel to eastern Uganda, where most of the long-distance athletes come from, you will see that most of the people there now, the population is embracing athletics as an economic activity, because everybody, every kid, every school, every morning you find them on the street running, trying to train, to practice, with the hope that maybe in the future they will become international athletes and make a good living. Because of course they are seeing those of Jacob Okiprimo, Joshua Cheptegei, Stephen Kiprotich, the ladies, Sarah Chesang, and many others, living a good life out of their sweat. And many parents now are encouraging their children to take on athletics as a serious business. Sometimes back, parents would not allow their children to participate in sports because everyone thought that academics was the only way out of someone making a good living out of life. But now people have come to realize, especially like I told you in eastern Uganda and then western Kenya, many parts of Ethiopia. I've been to western Kenya several times. There's a place called Iteng. There's a town called Eldoret. This one was built by athletes. So it shows when you get there, you see skyscrapers. And the skyscraper that was built by this athlete. The other big building belongs to this athlete. And now this is now slowly but steadily growing in eastern Uganda, especially in the Kapchora district. There are 3 districts where most of the Ugandan athletes come from. That is in the mountain Elgon area, and that is Kapchora, Queen, and Boko. This is where most of them come from. But when you get there, the beautiful buildings, the towns have been built by athletes from the money they get from participating in international events. Yes, indeed, athletics, especially in East Africa, has become business for many young people, and yes, and partly mostly because of the promoters who come from Europe. Because if you see the guys who are here promoting athletics, most of them the coaches come from Europe. There are a few local coaches who are involved, but the money that these young people use to grow their talent comes from the Western world. And I think this also helps because our local governments have not done enough. They have not done enough to inject money into sports development. Maybe we shall see it growing because now Uganda has an international standard training center, the Stephen Kiprotich Training Center in Intermediate. It's located at 2,450 meters above sea level. I think it's the highest in Africa now, and that's built to modern standards. Probably this will also help improve the standards here, and this is what I can say is government contribution to the development of athletics, especially in eastern Uganda, where most of our long distance come from.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fidel Nwadi.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 4:39 Central African time. Yes, you may be listening to us from wherever it is on the continent that you may be. Who knows? Maybe you're listening to us via the various DSTV platforms on the SABC Plus app, which is available on the Google and Apple's Play stores. Or maybe you're listening to us via YouTube. And if you are, then not only are you listening to us, but you're watching us as well. So here's an open invitation for you to migrate to YouTube and use more of your senses for your listening experience. Let's focus now on the African Union Commission through its Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Development, jointly with the African Union Development Agency and the new Partnership for African Development, known as NEPAD. They've launched collectively the Comprehensive African Agricultural Program, Strategy and Action Plan 2026 to 2035. The official launch is being held in Johannesburg, South Africa. And to give us greater insight on this launch, we joined this afternoon by the Director for Food, Agriculture and Natural Resources at the SADC Secretariat, Domingos Goova. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business. Good to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Good day to you and to the listeners.
So could you briefly explain what the CADP strategy is and what it means for you as the SADC region and the continent?
Yes, thank you. You will recall that at the continental level and regional and even national level, we've been working collectively together since 2003 with the Maputo Declaration, which marked the launch of the CADA process, the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program. And then 10 years down the road, this process was again looked at, and a new so-called Malabo Declaration was approved in Equatorial Guinea to recommit all the member states in the implementation of the CADA program. And now, 10 years down the road, the new CADA program has been approved in January by the African Union Head of States and Government in Kampala, the so-called Kampala Declaration. So the meeting that was held and is being held yesterday and today here in Joburg marks the official launch by the African Union Commission of this program, a program that is expected to be implemented by all the African member states from the 2026. And basically, the main change on this third program is the expansion from the focus on agriculture to the agri-food system, indicating that we have to open our approach to include all the relevant sectors that could support the agriculture sector to thrive and be able to adequately deliver to ensure food and nutrition security and also address poverty of the majority of our population.
Mm. And what are the likely benefits, sir, of a strategy of this nature? What are we likely to see coming out of it?
Yes, we have to work as a continent. I think in a situation where we have globalization, working as independent or separately, it will not bear those fruits that we're aiming at. And this has been the role of the African Union Commission, but equally the role of the regional economic communities like SADC. And this is the call that we are making to all member states to work as one. And basically here is to ensure that we have a framework, a Pan-African framework, which is the CADA process. And at the regional level, we have already looked at the recently approved Kampala Declaration, and we have revised our regional agriculture policy to be fully compliant or aligned with the CADA process. And we will be engaging with individual member states to update what they call their national agriculture investment plans to be fully aligned with the revised regional agriculture policy and the CADAP. And basically it is a framework that empowers the countries to move in one direction together, but equally it is a framework that ensures accountability of individual member states on how they are moving. And we do have processes and strategies there for resource mobilization and so forth. So it is a program that calls back member states to work together and to look into the continent as one. You will recall that we have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So instead of a specific country working towards its boundaries, they have really to flex the muscles to look not only internally, but equally the entire African continent to facilitate the trade and maximize the benefit for their economy.
Could you talk us through the scope of the program and how much autonomy or self-determination the individual countries will have within the collective? Are we likely to find ourselves perhaps where, even the crops that are being planted and produced change because of trade environments or because of production, supply and demand? What is the scope and how much, quote unquote interference, perhaps for lack of a better word, will there be from this type of body?
Yes, thanks. It's not really touching the sovereignty of the individual member states. The sovereignty is there. The African Union will never interfere with sovereignty, the same with the SADC and other regional economic communities. It is just a framework to guide the member states to maximize the potential of agriculture. In a global world, with the Western world, US, the Far East, with China and other countries, it will be really very difficult for us to compete with them in other areas rather than in agriculture and then maximizing in agro-processing and so on. So basically, it will not dictate to individual member states what type of crops and so on, but it will open opportunities for individual member states to maximize the potential. For example, if a specific member state is good and willing to produce and continue producing maize, it will promote collaboration with other member states within and outside the region, but within the continent, to facilitate the trade of that specific commodity, so that the tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers could be addressed, so that the export of those goods within the region could be facilitated.
Very
and
well
also
understood, yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, putting all of that into perspective for us. We really look forward to seeing what will come out of this particular formation. We thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Mr. Domingos Agov. He's the Director for Food, Agriculture and Natural Resources at SADC Secretariat. It's exactly 4:47 Central African Time.
Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, reports that over 3 million children are involved in prostitution globally, while the International Labour Organization estimates that 1 million people are trafficked annually for sexual exploitation. Many victims are lured with false promises of a better future.
We have serious problems, Lulu. One, we had porous borders, easy access of these criminal transnational syndicates coming in and living at ease. Number one. Number two, we also have a problem where some of our law enforcement officers, those who are rogue, who work hand in glove with the syndicates because they give them something in return of them turning a blind eye. Point number three, we have a problem of corruption that leads to us being a playground of this transnational organized crime.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Now, the Oakland Institute report titled Climate Wash, the World Bank's fresh offensive on land rights, details how the World Bank is using the pretext of the climate crisis to push a global land reform agenda that favors corporate interests at the expense of people and the planet. The report reveals how the bank is appropriating climate commitments made at the Conference of the Parties, which is COP, to justify its multi-billion-dollar initiative to quote-unquote formalize land tenure across the global south. Helping us unpack the Climate Watch report this afternoon is Frederick Monsieur, Policy Director of the Oakland Institute. Good to have you with us, so welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
So what is climate washing? And I'm using that in inverted commas. And I ask this in the context of agriculture or land use. And perhaps if you could, give us some of the case studies that you have of this practice.
It really goes together because the World Bank is saying, we need land for climate action. But one of their big agenda is actually free up land in Africa for large-scale agriculture. And it has been an objective for the World Bank for a long time. So the IPCC, the climate experts are saying we need land for climate action to save us from the disaster we are in. But what they are saying, these experts, is we need to protect land from overexploitation, from deforestation, from large-scale devastation that we see everywhere. But what the World Bank is saying is, yes, we need land for climate action, but actually what they want to do is, and what we are describing in the report is more conversion and more exploitation of this land. So they take this pretext of this climate action to do more of the same, catering for the interests who have brought us where we are.
So do you have actual case studies where this practice is ongoing?
Yeah, so we have several case studies in the report showing what happens at the country level with the World Bank programs. You have to know that there are over 80 programs dealing with land at the World Bank, so in over 80 countries. So these programs are happening everywhere, a lot in Africa. Africa is seen as the last frontier for agricultural markets in the world of the World Bank. So in the case study we have. In the report, we have a case study on Madagascar and Malawi, where we see the World Bank really pushing for individual titling, creating of land markets, saying, African farmers are not investing. See, if we give them titles, then they can mortgage their land, and then they will have money and they can invest. But they have also in mind that what is the plan for agriculture for them is consolidation of land, that once you have titles, people are going to lease their land, sell their land, mortgage their land at the bank, and possibly lose it to the bank. And their big plan, their vision, and it's what they're saying themselves, it's not us assuming, is really consolidation of land with smaller farmers moving out of agriculture. So African agriculture can become the kind of American model with large-scale mechanized, heavily reliant on agricultural inputs, which is which really raise the question of where are the farmers going to go and what are they going to be doing.
And let's touch on the issue of the bank for a moment. And I really want to talk about the local communities and the farmers as well. But you've just mentioned, as far as the banks are concerned, one of the findings is that the bank is appropriating climate commitments that have been made at COP, the Conference of the Parties, to justify the multi-billion-dollar initiative to formalize land tenure. How does it go about doing this, and which commitments specifically have been appropriated?
So they have been at the COP. The government and experts have said we need a number of different actions for adaptation and mitigation, and they say that 40% of these actions require land. But when they say require land, they mean we need to reforest, we need to protect, we need to develop systems like better management of land and environment, like with agroecology, for instance, or agroforestry systems. But they don't say we need to title or privatize this land or open it for investment. What the World Bank is saying, and it's clear in their own publications, is we need to formalize this land so it can be, part of it can be given to investors, and another part can be, we can give titles to individuals so they can benefit from mining or from leasing or selling the land to private investors. And so it's complete misuse of the recommendation, because at the COP it is about protecting and conserving, and for the bank is rather putting it into quotation marks productive use.
And let's talk about the impact that this has had on local communities, on farmers, and on indigenous people.
Yeah, I mean, if the bank is doing that today, it's because they've been trying for decades to pursue this agenda. They see that, all over Africa, most of the land is either under customary land tenure or it's public land. There's very little private land on the continent. So what the bank has seen is, this is a problem, a constraint, an obstacle for investment. So they've been at it for several decades. Actually, we've been working on that and monitoring what they were doing and calling them out several times in the past 2 decades, because they see really this, what they call informal land tenure, as an obstacle to investment. And when we see these big land grabbers, as we've seen coming in a number of places from Tanzania to DRC or elsewhere, we see these private investors coming, taking over hundreds of thousands of hectares of land and chasing away the farmers or pastoralists who are living on this land with no future for them. So we've seen that happening over the past 20 years in many countries on the continent. But we've seen also a lot of resistance from the African community saying, this is our ancestors' land, this is the land of our future generations. It's not something we're going to sell or lease. We're okay to to have some development. We're not against development, but it's not about losing our land. So there have been a big opposition from many communities and many governments, actually, saying that we are Africans, we are attached to our land, we're not going to privatize and sell, and where are we going to go?
So, Frederick, as we conclude this afternoon, the World Bank's 2025 Land Conference, it started yesterday in Washington, D.C. What are some of the things you hope will be highlighted at the conference insofar as the bank's conduct is concerned, and also in reference to the Oakland Institute report?
Really, I'm grateful you're covering this report, because one thing we hope will be clear in this conference is that there are very serious concerns about the World Bank's land agenda, which is beautifully wrapped into climate action, also gender equity and all kind of washing they will do. But it's important for people, for the experts, for government officials to be aware that there is a hidden agenda there. It's not about good for development and good for climate. It is really about catering for the same interests that have brought us where we are. And there's really a need for especially African governments, because Africa is the first target, to really be aware of this agenda and the pressure to open more land for exploitation.
And as you say, it's all there in black or white as revealed by this report. We thank you so much for breaking it down for us this afternoon. So you have yourself a good one further. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. That was Frederick Mosio, Policy Director of the Oakland Institute. It's exactly 4:57 Central African Time as we wrap up Africa in Business. Bonjour, Joël.
Bonjour, Thami. Bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa.
Très jolis cheveux.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour et particulièrement à ceux de Vue d'Afrique, puisque Vue d'Afrique, c'est tout à l'heure, nous parlerons de la nouvelle tentative d'union des forces de l'opposition au Cameroun, mais aussi de l'administration Trump qui prévoit de mettre fin à la contribution américaine à l'AD, mais aussi pour les grands titres de ce soir de la Côte d'Ivoire, l'opposition hausse le ton. C'est tout de suite sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci, Thami.
Merci, Joël. Well, it's exactly 4:58. Thank you so much for having been part of Africa in Business this afternoon. Thank you to our production team, producer Mabubu Loka, technical producer Dando Lutuli, and social media Nzako Mashaba. For Channel Africa, I am Thami Ngubeni. It's exactly, coming up in just a short while, you'll be getting the latest headlines, but this time in French. Have yourself a great evening further.
The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
Just the other day, I went to pick up my daughter from school, and as per usual, her friends don't usually come to my car just to say hellos and goodbyes. So this particular day, they made this comment about my jacket, saying that it's giving baddie vibes. You say my jacket is giving what?
It's giving
Baddie vibes. It got me thinking, where did the baddies come from? Because nothing is new under the sun, as it is said. I was like, oh yes, remember the Kenyan parliamentarian? Her name is Millie Odhiambo.
When you are urging me to be a good example to the girls, the younger ones who are doing their first term, Mr. Speaker, if they are good girls, they'll never get corner office. Be as bad as Millie Odhiambo, you will be the mother of this house. So do not be cheated like the African culture, where you are told have decorum, be nice. I'm telling you, you will go nowhere. Be a bad girl like me.
And I thought to myself, that is the original baddie.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time.
Vue d'Afrique, un magazine des actualités en français sur Channel Africa. Rendez-vous du lundi au vendredi avec Joël Mouteba sur Channel Africa de 15h à 16h, temps universel. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Bonjour et merci d'avoir choisi Canal Afrique pour vous informer à travers son programme Vue d'Afrique, le magazine d'actualité en français en information. Et je suis Joël Mouteba à la présentation. Tout de suite, voici les grands titres qui font l'actualité du jour. Nouvelle tentative d'union des forces de l'opposition au Cameroun à l'approche de l'élection présidentielle prévue dans 5 mois. L'administration Trump prévoit de mettre fin à la contribution américaine à la BAD, une décision qui risque d'ébranler le financement du développement en Afrique. Et enfin, pour les grands titres de ce soir, en Côte d'Ivoire, l'opposition hausse le ton et annonce un rassemblement fin mai afin d'exiger un dialogue pour la tenue des élections inclusives. Ce sont là quelques-uns des grands titres qui seront développés après le bulletin d'information que nous présente Joël Kabongo. Bonjour Kabongo.
Bonjour Joël.
SABC, actualité. La perspective africaine.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous, bienvenue à cette nouvelle édition qui s'ouvre au Mali. Les partis politiques appellent à un nouveau rassemblement prévu pour ce vendredi 9 mai. Réunis lundi, les chefs des partis ont décidé de maintenir la pression pour protester contre leur dissolution programmée, mais aussi pour exiger la fin de la transition et le retour à l'ordre constitutionnel. Le week-end dernier, leur meeting avait été empêché par des individus mobilisés par les autorités de transition et par l'intervention de la police, ce qui avait donné lieu à des scènes des contestations inédites devant le palais de la culture de Bamako. Cette fois-ci, le rendez-vous est fixé non pas dans la salle, mais en pleine rue, au cœur de la capitale Bamako, sur une place symbolique des combats menés par le peuple malien contre l'ex-président Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, ayant régné de 2013 à 2020. En République centrafricaine, le chef rebelle Armel Sayo a été extradé lundi vers Bangui après près de 4 mois après son arrestation au Cameroun. L'ancien ministre centrafricain qui avait repris les armes l'année passée en menaçant de renverser le régime actuel a été acheminé après de longues procédures diplomatiques et judiciaires. Armel Sayo a ensuite été acheminé à la direction générale de la police. Il a été auditionné avant d'être renvoyé à la prison militaire de haute sécurité du camp de Roux dans le centre-ville de Bangui, où il est détenu. Sous le coup d'un mandat d'arrêt international après avoir lancé un groupe rebelle, Armel Sayo avait été arrêté en janvier à l'aéroport de Douala, alors qu'il s'apprêtait à prendre l'avion pour la France. Accusé des tentatives de coup d'État et de menaces de déstabilisation, le chef de rebelle risque la prison à vie s'il est reconnu coupable. Au Soudan du Sud, Mohamed Ali Youssouf, président de la Commission de l'Union africaine, a rencontré lundi le président du Soudan du Sud, Salva Kiir Mayardi, afin de relancer la mise en œuvre de l'accord revitalisé.
Cet accord, conclu en 2018 après 5 ans de conflit civil, risque de s'effondrer depuis l'arrestation de l'ancien premier vice-président Riek Machar en mars. Youssouf a souligné la nécessité d'accélérer la mise en œuvre de l'accord de paix, de renforcer la paix et la sécurité régionale et de faciliter une gouvernance démocratique progressive au Soudan du Sud. Il a réaffirmé la solidarité de l'Union africaine avec le peuple et le gouvernement du Soudan du Sud dans leurs efforts pour mettre en œuvre l'accord de paix, avant d'exhorter les acteurs politiques du Soudan du Sud à collaborer pour finaliser la feuille de route de la transition et mener le pays à des élections démocratiques.
Dans une communication tenue lundi au palais Tourmaï, le président tchadien Mahamat Idriss Déby Itno a annoncé la fin du cadre national de concertation des partis politiques. Le chef de l'État du Tchad a par ailleurs invité les acteurs politiques à concevoir un nouvel organe permanent de dialogue adapté à la nouvelle ère du Tchad post-transition. Cette initiative intervient dans un contexte politique marqué par des tensions au sein de la classe politique, illustré par le bras de fer entre Succès Masra, ancien Premier ministre de transition et opposant arrivé deuxième à la présidentielle de 2024, et Abderrahmane Koulama, ex-chef de la diplomatie et actuel sénateur. Pour rappel, dans un message à l'occasion du 7e anniversaire de son parti, les Transformateurs, Succès Masra avait appelé le président Déby à changer des caps pour que le changement voulu par le peuple devienne une réalité. Nous allons boucler au Gabon. 2 jours après son investiture comme président de la République,